Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here. Now we're going to start to take this particular unit apart, but I'm not going to go through every screw with you seeing that. We've got this pretty much faceplate on here, and it's hard with big items like this to get them in focus in terms of showing the entire process. You have to be so far back, so I'm not going to do that in general. So I'm going to take the faceplate off. It looks like this is holding most of it with this ridiculous giant cabinet. It doesn't look like these screws are doing anything but holding this laminated plate on there. And then we'll see what else we've got. As I mentioned, we already got some damage here. This came off. This is the battery powered. What he did here is connect these to 9 volts to make it easier instead of converting over to a unit that could be used for this, which is kind of silly. Shows you he's not very electrically aligned either. You can easily make something to take larger voltage, or just use a plain and simple transformer that can up the energy to the 240, or take the 240, I should say, down to the 120, or the 220 down to the 120. To do that. So that's the usual problems here. And of course, when you're using batteries like this and these kind of connectors, you have all sorts of problems with that. So, but that's not necessarily a unit. That's the problem with this particular manufacturer. This is a Jensen's unit, the famous strange person Jensen. And we'll take a look at his work, what he's got inside, how it's put together, etc. I'm not expecting too much. He seems to know a fair amount. He wrote a book on this and so forth, but he didn't understand a lot of energy, about energies and alloptic energies, and was very down on using actual tubes, which give you a very unique resonance. And when someone does something like that, it shows they're not overly thinking in terms of what happened. Just because Hieronymus moved away from that because it was no longer the standard doesn't necessarily mean that that was good. Hieronymus went through many different models. This is the aniopathic unit, which is supposed to send out energies at a kind of random basis that but it has certain frequencies that go out that are supposed to treat you for anything. It's quite a fascinating unit, and it's hard to really say if it ever worked. Hieronymus is the one, and I think probably the only that I am aware of right now, radionic practitioner who did live into his 90s. And back then, that was pretty good. I think he lived to be 92 or 3. I'm not 100% sure. But he did live long. So that does say something about, I don't know, his constitution, or hopefully his technology. All the other radionic practitioners out there, you name them, all died relatively young. In their late 60s, I think Ruth Drown, who had some problems, was 73. Some people say she was injected in prison with something, but you know, she got out of prison after that harassment and lived for quite a period of time later and continued doing her practice. You know, it's all these diluted stories. It's hard to know what the truth is and what's going on. But in general, radionic practitioners didn't do well. The famous radionic practitioner Tansley got cancer and died in his 50s. But the other practitioners, certainly you would think that they would be able to live longer. But if you're exposed to illness energies all the time, well, that's going to cause you a problem in general. Treating people means you're taking on the illness to a degree, and you have to be very careful. So let me get this front panel off, and then we will look inside. And of course, this is a special presentation only for Patreon members, so that you will be able to see this. You know, this is expensive technology. I don't know, these 2 units bought many years ago, it was around $1,200. All of these technologies cost money and time to look at them and analyze them and see what, and we're kind of reverse engineer them. So, you know, if you want to see stuff like this and you want to see the latest and greatest units, well, we need to have your support, which is why this is going to Patreon members only. So hold on, more to come. Okay, everyone, we've got the screws off the side panel. Let's open this little puppy up and see what's in there. Okay. Of course, this doesn't have any adjustments on it in terms of potentiometers or capacitors, tunable capacitors, what he usually used. This seems to be the adjustment here, which has a stop on it. Apparently there is... I'm not sure why you do that, but he does have this connected to this here, of course. This is all plexiglass and this in here, and that's your kind of out plate, and you would put photographs and stuff in there. But why you'd make something that large, I have absolutely no idea. We're certainly going to be taking that out and so forth. So let's take a look at the wiring in here. And this is pretty interesting in terms of the fact of what it is. Now, apparently this, from what I can see, is just a, there's nothing, and we'll take that out. I think that's just a piece of wood to kind of push this out of the, to hold this plate on that is tuned. And there is an actual timer in here, apparently. But there is a couple of wires that go from here. I'm assuming that's the input. Input would then go to here. And this is kind of where you would rest something on. Very bizarre as a general design there. The whole cabinet is bizarre. When it should have been made into plates, he made it into this. But all this I'm going to take out and get rid of the giant cabinet here. But of course, he's made it difficult to do that. Now, let's look at some of this wiring here. I don't even get enough light in here that we can figure it out here. Now, here's the cup here that you're supposed to be sending to you, and it's, this is a glass cup, which is, glass is basically non-conductive or very low conductive. You've got the, it says output here. This is going to an output. I mean, the wiring here doesn't seem to make sense. I don't know why the input would go here. So the input is right here. Yeah, this is the input. It would come from here, go to the input, and then through the machine. And this is basically the output here as all the wires go around to the output, which is then connected to the actual cup here. I don't know if you can see that. It's very hard to, with these giant machines, to try and get decent pictures of it. So those are actually the outputs there. So that you would attach to whatever you want to send something out to. Let me move this for a second. Yeah, that's the output, which is basically where you would put where the energy's going to. This is the input. Apparently, you would put photographs or whatever right on here. This is kind of your plate, I guess, your input plate where you'd put photographs on. And of course, I don't really quite get that either. There seems to be a coil underneath there that he's taped over, but we'll look at that as well. It's going to be a multi-segment tape I can see here, but and of course, this is the glass. All he's done, he has electrical taped over that. Why, I don't know, but he's got this wire coming in here, and I don't know if there's any other wires going on there or not. Most machines are pretty simple. This is pretty complicated in his own little way. So he's got the wire taped on there, causing a circuit to be formed. But you got to remember, glass is an insulator. It doesn't really do that. You also got plastic there. But we're not really looking at that. You got to remember, what are these energies? And that is the big question, of course. What are they? So, what else has he got here? He's got this particular, which I guess was glued on here. That, oops, came off. Let me get this resting here. So he's got a little coil here. And whatever these, I don't know if those are resistors, they look like probably capacitors that he's put in a series here from the coil to the series. But, you know, stuff like this is nice to know because you can, imitate that and just put a coil that goes into what I'm assuming are actual capacitors which hold energy. And he's got those in a series that then runs, and this goes like this, and then that goes out to these wires. This wire goes in. We got one wire coming out of here going to the out, but there's no other wires there except I guess that's an in wire. So we've got an in wire going there and one out wire of what's going on here that seems to, I guess this is an in wire. He's got two in wires. He's got one in wire going to the actual coil, which then goes through here, and then it's going out here, and we got one going in here as well. I think he has plans on all this kind of stuff, and we have found most of these kind of plans hanging around that you can obtain on our website. These are just Hieronymus basic plans. We've got some resistors here, and you can, if you can see that by the color. Twisted wires again. It's going into here. So this is quite a complicated little wiring going on here. But you know, I mean, it's just wiring. There really isn't much to it. I mean, there really isn't any. You know, what are the empowerments? So we got a little resistor here, which can be looked up. We've got a coil. We got a few capacitors. I mean, that's all that there is to it. The rest of it looks to me to be complicated wiring for basically no purpose. He's got switches and other things that he has on here. And let's look at that again with all that's going on. I don't know if he had two batteries connected to this or not. We got a battery going in here that is putting energy there, which is the front, and it's coming out. Not exactly it or not. That's at the bottom here. So he's got power going in here, which is going through this and going through the system in general. So it is powered, and you are getting, well, those are 9-volt batteries. If he's got two of them, you're getting 18 volts there that are going through this. I'm not sure what they all do. This goes, this one goes to here. It's going to, he's sending energy. Is that the right thing? Yeah, he's actually putting voltage to one of the, that's an, what again? That's an input. He's sending energy into the input. And then we got another one here that is going to a series of wires, including to a resistor. I'm assuming that's a, these are lights here. This is a light, so he's got power going to the lights, and that's really typical. A lot of the power just goes to the light, so it looks like something's happening. And then it goes through here, and we've got, again, more. These are more resistors, and it seems to be the same type. This is not a resistor. He's just got them twisted there. This is the light. This is a light. These are three. Yeah, he's got 3 lights there. These are all 3 lights that he's obviously sending power to when you flick the switch. And usually they don't do much. So this is going to be a complicated wiring situation here, but this should give you a good idea of what these things look like inside. Actually, there's a lot more going on here than I thought, but yes and no. There's really nothing going on. He's got this coil aspect with these resistors. All this other stuff is just mechanical, just regular energy flow to get lights going and other things. This is where you're supposed to put something in, which is a glass container, which glass, as I said, is not a conductor of electricity. It's actually a non-conductor. It's an insulator. Got another one here. Okay, we got wires going up with in the bottom here because of this weird giant contraption here where you're supposed to put stuff in, and it's all kind of it's all plexiglass, shiny plexiglass. I can't really get shots of that without blurring everything. So these wires are basically going to what is considered, of course, it's going over to here. What was that again? The input plate. So you would consider that this is a right up here. You would consider right up here as your in plate. Now, it doesn't appear that this does anything, but I'll have to take this more apart and we'll look at things without all this nonsense here that we have. This just seems to be a wooden, that's just a wooden holding thing so it can hold this actual, which is got a little timer in there. Now, I don't know what's behind here. I think it's just a clock, but I'm going to have to take all that stuff out and see exactly how that looks. I mean, what's behind here? What's that? But you've got a good idea what the wiring is going on here. And this is, of course, a unique unit. It's not really a bank unit, a dial unit. And this goes against most of what we would consider radionic stuff because of the fact that it is very electric. Radionic machines that go through potentiometer dials and other things are not. This is kind of a frequency unit. It's a unique type of unit that he particularly produced that puts out some sort of cosmic and Hertzian type energies, which is supposed to clear you of everything. And you put your picture on there and you would do that. So it's quite an odd little, well, I don't know if it's an odd machine, but you can see it's very typical, though. That don't let this confuse you, the fact that this is a lot of electrical stuff. It really isn't. You've got a lot of different, let's turn this around. A lot of different stuff connects to the on and off, and the treatment thing here, and there's a scan light. So all these things light up. You've got your ins and outs. But when you really look at stuff, this is just a switch. And he's sending energies to different places here. And where is it going? Yeah. So these are just routing, and it's surprisingly much more electric than your average radionic machine. So usually, as I said, you don't get this kind of electricity, and you don't have electricity going through wires. This seems to be a live wire with all of it. So once you do this, there is electricity going through the whole thing. And I'm not sure in terms of that, these must be the frequencies that are being put out. This just seems to be, this unit over here just seems to be a timer and nothing else. This is, you can hear it. You hear that? I think that's just plain and simple a timer, and I think he built one in to do it originally, Hieronymus. But when you really look at this, again, there's not much to it. There's not many wires doing that. You've got wires going, okay, what do we got? Wires here to the on and off switch. So we're going to have to check that out and find out, well, what exactly is behind here other than an actual timer, because it looks like it's just a timer. So we're going to have to figure that out as we go through other, as we further disassemble this. This is going to take a little bit of work to get everything down out of the big giant mess here to a workable unit. And we'll show you that. So this is basically disassembly for this unit, the anopathic. This is one. We'll follow up with two as we disassemble this more.